control. Augusta ruled the household with strict rules and an iron will, ensuring that Ed remained under her supervision at all times. She discouraged him from forming any attachments outside the family, and she instilled a sense of fear that the outside world would corrupt him. Ed's days were spent performing chores on the farm, learning obedience, and internalizing the moral dogma his mother enforced. There was no room for emotional expression, play, or rebellion. Any deviation from her expectations was met with punishment or harsh reprimand. Even as a child, Ed began to internalize Augusta's lessons, and the effects on his psyche were profound. The combination of isolation, moral indoctrination, and constant fear produced a boy who was socially awkward, deeply insecure, and psychologically fragile. He learned to suppress emotions, hide his thoughts, and internalize guilt in ways that would later shape his behaviors as an adult. His mother's teachings about women, sexuality, and morality created a foundation of repression and confusion that would later explode in destructive ways. It is also important to understand the cultural context of the time. Rural Wisconsin in the early 20th century was a place where religious fervor, superstition, and strict moral codes were common. Augusta's extreme views, while not universally shared, were amplified by her isolationist lifestyle. Her influence on Ed was magnified by the absence of alternative perspectives and social interactions, leaving him with no reference point to challenge or question the rigid worldview he was taught. By the time Ed reached adolescence, the seeds of his later pathology had already been sown. He had learned to fear the world, distrust human relationships, and repress his natural impulses. His mother's influence was omnipresent, and the psychological damage of his upbringing created a fertile ground for the behaviors that would eventually terrify the nation. Living in fear under his mother's shadow was not just a childhood experience, it was the crucible that forged the man who would become one of America's most infamous criminals. Augusta's rigid control, her obsessive morality, and her paranoia about sin left Ed ill-equipped to navigate the world outside her oppressive presence, setting him on a path of isolation, obsession, and eventually, horror. In the end, Ed Gein's childhood illustrates how extreme parental influence, isolation, and fear can warp a developing mind. The combination of Augusta's fanatical beliefs, the lack of social interaction, and the harsh moral environment created a psychological pressure cooker that would later explode in ways that shocked the nation. What Netflix and popular media often overlook is the slow, insidious nature of this upbringing, the years of fear, suppression, and control that quietly molded a young boy into the infamous figure history remembers. Understanding this background provides a chilling, human context to Ed Gein.